Welcome, everyone, to cbuzz, the award-winning podcast presented by the Columbus Chamber of Commerce and proudly recognized as Columbus's very first business-focused podcast. We're really thrilled that you're here and to bring you this show in partnership with Capital University. My name is Michaela Hunt, your host and brand journalist for cbuzz, where we dive right into the compelling stories of the leaders who are truly shaping Central Ohio's vibrant business community. Today, we're broadcasting from the Convergent Media Center at Capital University, a truly dynamic space where students and faculty collaborate on music, film, creative writing, and digital media projects. We are excited to share these incredible stories with you from this innovative hub. Please welcome our guest today, Aravind Chandrasekaran, who is Interim Dean of the Ohio State University Max M. Fisher College of Business. Aravind, who we'll call AC today, was named Interim Dean of the Ohio State University Max M. Fisher College of Business in June of 2025, bringing more than 15 years of experience as an operations management expert and academic leader. He holds the John Berry Senior Chair in Business and has previously served as a Senior Associate Dean for Faculty, Research, and Executive Education, as well as Associate Dean for Graduate Programs. A celebrated educator and researcher, AC's work explores innovation, organizational learning, and the intersection of AI, ethics, and operational excellence. Aravind, AC, welcome to cbuzz. Are you ready for a good conversation today?
Thank you, first of all, for having me, Michaela, and thank you again for this invite. Really excited to be a part of this conversation.
We're thrilled to have you with us, especially where we're talking about this intersection that I just mentioned, leadership, innovation, and truly how Fisher is preparing the next generation of business leaders in this rapidly changing world, as we all know. So again, you've been part of Fisher for more than about 15 years. I want to know what first brought you to Ohio State and also what has kept you there.
Okay, so I came here, I was born and raised in India, but I came to Minnesota, University of Minnesota, to do my PhD and my master's degree there. And I also had the opportunity to work with several companies in Minnesota. So 3M is an example of company that I've worked a lot with. Again, a truly innovative company right in the Midwest, but really doing brilliant things that people really admire about. So some of the things that I developed there, my research was on innovation and learning, how companies really promote better innovation and better thinking among their individuals. And when I moved to Ohio State, one of the things that really attracted me to Ohio State is we have in Fisher College of Business the idea around problem-driven research. So it's very important that we believe in. It's not important for you to just solve a problem. It's something that has to matter for in this case, managers. And so the thing that drew me here were some of the work that was happening through the Center for Operational Excellence. So COE, or Center for Operational Excellence, is a center that is hosted in Fisher, and that has about 40 member companies right now. And that does a very interesting job of being at the intersection of problems that the companies have and faculty expertise and student talent, and really connect them in a way that allows our faculty to work on live problems and our students to really understand and work on these problems, and also the companies to benefit from those kind of expertise. So COE was really an organization that drove me here. There were members of the faculty that were actually working with COE that were really inspirational to me. A gentleman who retired now from Ohio State named Peter Ward was the chair of the operations department and also the academic director of COE, and did a lot of work in the area of lean management.
Oh, yes. Lean Six Sigma and those things.
Sigma.
Yeah.
And Peter always talked about it's important for us to think about problems as something that is not just something that you can solve, but something you can solve and sustain. And those kind of things were really happening a lot in that area, and that drew me here.
That drew you here. Golden Gopher to Buckeye, is that right? Am I thinking of that correctly? Okay.
And what kept me here is also some of the wonderful things that are happening in our community. I mean, if you think about it, Columbus, when I came to Columbus, Ohio, I was really blown away because I thought Columbus was another small town like West Lafayette or College Station. You come in here and you are in a place where if you were to draw a circle with Columbus as a center and like 100-mile radius, you have more than 24 Fortune 500 companies. And you're talking about companies like Nationwide, Huntington, Cardinal Health, Wexner Medical Center, you have Ohio Health. There is a tons of companies here, and then you also have things in Cincinnati and Cleveland that are not that far away. What really drew me here is that kind of energy around these problems. And right from the day one at Fisher, I started working with several of these companies in various aspects of that.
How do companies become a part of the COE? I don't know if I know the answer to that.
I think there is a membership, like any organization. COE is a nonprofit organization, so there is a small membership fee towards it. It's more along the lines of what, again, if you are interested in operations and operational excellence, and you want to really engage with Ohio State and Fisher,
it's a way to do it.
It's a way to do that, and they have several programming activities that allows that kind of connection to happen.
Fisher has a really strong focus on developing principled, purpose-driven leaders as well. Given what you're doing with problem-driven research and wanting to develop those kinds of leaders within the school to go out in the world and do the good work, what does that look like in practice?
Yeah, again, if you think about it, some of the people that I talk to ask me, what is principled leadership, right? The idea around principled leadership is somebody who thinks about problems holistically. It's not, again, is finding some real short-term solutions, but really convincing others in a way that they're all a part of that journey, right? That is very important. So if you think about it, leadership traits like listening, like thinking about change management differently, thinking about active experimentation. These are skill sets that I think are very relevant in today's world. If you think about, everybody talks about AI, and I always tell you that humans have a lot of space in the generation of AI, because what you see is that you need leaders to really think about and question the algorithms. You need them to really reason out why this is the right thing to do. You need them to experiment and not be afraid of experimentation. These are the skill sets that I think a lot of students need in this current day and age. And we at Fisher are very proud to say that we are actually helping our students accomplish these things. And most of these skill sets cannot be just taught in a classroom. They've got to be experienced, like I just used about COE.
Yeah.
And there are other centers at Fisher, like there is the Risk Institute, to just name another center, where they take students and then work with companies and expose them to some of these problems where they can actually demonstrate and learn these listening skills. They can learn these experimentation, which is what makes it very unique. It's something that cannot be just taught in a classroom. It has to be practiced, and it has to be practiced and learned from that practice. And that's what makes principled leadership very different. It's more pragmatic way of thinking about organizations and winning, but it's much more holistic and much more, I would say, practice-based.
I want to go back to what you touched on with AI and, developing these principled leaders with AI, because it is the hot topic, of course. When it comes to your thoughts on prompt engineering or teaching them how to use it correctly when they're thinking through change management or whatever that might be, what are some of your favorite things to do with tools or to prompt AI? And what do some of your instructors at Fisher talk about with the students in regard to those things?
So if you think about this, AI is only as smart as you humans are. So if you ask the right questions, you may get the right answers. But if you ask the wrong questions, you may have a different answer, right? And you may create more hallucination and other things happening. So one of the things, first of all, to understand the whole idea around interacting with AI, you've got to understand the domain expertise. So I'll give you one example. It's a real-time example of a thing that happened with some students at Fisher. So we had, very similar to the Center for Operational Excellence, we have our faculty taking students to and solve problems, to go and solve problems. And there was a class on, you mentioned Lean Six Sigma. There was a class on Lean Six Sigma where students were supposed to go and solve a problem, which is in this case happened to be more something called the hospital-acquired infections. So infections that happen when you're staying in a hospital, and especially hospital-acquired infections in an operating room. So when you're in an operating room, you're coming in, surgery is performed on you, but sometimes things can go wrong.
Right.
And because of that, you're staying longer or you're getting worse. So there's a lot of things that can go wrong because of hospital-acquired infections in the OR room. Now, if you use AI, right, if you were to, and these students were asked to solve this problem for a hospital, for a big healthcare institution. like anybody, these are very smart students. They started using technology like any Gen AI, ChatGPT, Microsoft Copilot, anything to understand what's the knowledge around it. What's the knowledge around hospital-level infections in OR rooms? And most often, again, when you use these AI tools, they end up going and doing a very nice, I would say, literature review.
Right.
Reviewing the literature, trying to understand, going and citing things. And they found that here are the 4 reasons why infections happen. And the 4 reasons were, just to name, like contamination of the instrumentation, maybe the contamination of the trace, maybe the patient is already infected before they come in, right? Like these are common reasons based on millions of empirical studies that have developed, right? And these are the 4 things. So if you were to just blindly follow those things, then you're going to find like maybe that's not the case. And in this case, those 4 were not the reason why this particular hospital had more OR infection. In fact, in this case, again, this is where the skill set that I talked about, listening, understanding, comes into fruition. Because in this case, the students ended up saying, yes, we are going to use these information, but we are not just going to blindly follow these AI-driven information. We are going to come up with our own assessment of what is wrong. They ended up spending some time really understanding how the OR processes work, where the patients come in, where the providers or physicians come in, how does the nurse flow in the inside the room and all, quickly to realize that the problem was basically because when the nurses were coming in and going out of the operating room had 2 doors. One door was towards the ventilated side of the OR, the other one was through the non-ventilated side, but it so happened that the non-ventilated side door was very close to the operating table, and it was a behavior of just providers, and some of these OR surgeries can be hours and hours long. They go in and out, in and out.
Right.
And when you go in and out, when the hospital door opens and closes more, there is a lot of possibility of contamination and infection happening there. Now, just to give you the story, think about this. Now, from nowhere, this is not even in those 5 or 6 lists that the AI
Well, that's what I was going to
generated.
say. I figured it probably was not.
Not there. This was something that was unique. So my point is, only humans can take advantage of what is already...
How it gathers the data and the research that's out there.
But humans have to have that thinking skill, that listening skill, that problem-solving skill, right? Like, so now the problem already changed from managing the contamination because of central sterile supply towards like, how do I make sure the nurses and the doctors are not using this room, this door, but the other door?
Right.
It's kind of a change management, behavioral things. But the students ended up doing this and saving more, not only money, but also saving several lives because some of these things are important, right? That's what I mean by critical thinking, and that's what I mean by listening. And when I say listening, it's not just listening, it's also seeing and getting a holistic view around it.
In this tech-driven world where we're using AI, how does ethics come into the teaching that you do at Fisher?
Very important. I would say I would use this term called responsible AI more than ethics alone. Ethics is good, and we all have to be ethical in what we do. The thing that we think is we are overwhelmed with data and overwhelmed with like things that might make us make decisions, but those decisions need not be the right thing. So I would say responsible AI governance is very, very, very important in today's world. So companies have to think about not only what is right or wrong from a perspective of how it's been perceived, but also what is the right decision to do and how your data is giving you the right decisions to do. And sometimes your data may not be also perfect. Your data might be biased. And I mean, like humans have to have that skill set, even question it. So one of the important skill set in this kind of AI-driven world is the art of questioning. Are you asking the right questions? How do I know this is right or wrong? And that's what we try to emphasize at Fisher is like, let's teach you the value of questioning and asking the right questions in more humble way. I call it as humble inquiry. It's very important. Like you don't want to be like braggish about this, but you've got to be humble enough and also like make sure you're asking the right questions so it leads to the right kind of problems.
Humble inquiry.
Inquiry, exactly. Yeah.
So there are challenges to leadership at every stage of the game. But our world is in our own unique place in 2026. What kinds of leadership challenges do you think are unique to our current climate?
So a couple of things, right? One is the workforce is changing. So what you see as Gen Zs and Gen Alphas, so that's the workforce that we're going to see in the next 5 to 10 years. They react to things differently, right? Like they are what I call like technology-driven people. So they are more and more prone to not looking at big size of information. They are more prone to like what we call like smaller TikTok information, for lack of
very
better word.
consumable.
Very consumable. So that means, again, their attention level might be somewhat different than Gen X and others, right? Like, and it's nothing wrong with that, but we've got to make advantage. But they're also smart. They're also technology driven. They also know how to use technology to get the right things done. So you, as leaders, we've got to understand that and then really manage that in a way. And more importantly, I'll also say, the more I see our students and Gen X, Gen Zs, and Gen Alphas, you talked about ethics. Ethics plays a very important role in them. So, like I've talked to several of our students who want to work with a company because of what the company is standing for. And they don't care about, sometimes we think about, oh, you can give higher paychecks to really attract people. Sometimes that does not win people, these Gen Zs and Gen Alphas. And it's for them, it's what's the value? Is the value system the company is giving is aligned with my value system as an individual? And if they are aligned, then they actually go in and really be a part of it. So those are all the things that I see are happening right now in terms of how our future generation of workforce is doing. And
it impacts leadership.
And
I just hired my first Gen Z individual. Yeah. She starts soon, and I'm excited. But we do need to know as leaders how to engage them and also how to grow them.
Yeah. So for instance, like they may not know all the essential things, right? Like you need to tell them is when do you decompartmentalize yourself from technology? Because these are people that have always grown with technology. And it's important for them to understand there are times when I need to isolate myself from technology and I go into my own reflection mode and I really think about what it is. And then I use the technology in the right way. These are skill sets, again, like that cannot be always applied everywhere, universally. So I think these are some unique things that I see. In fact, at Fisher, for instance, what I always argue is that gone are those days when you go into a classroom and you have 90 minutes of lecture. You are not going to get them, right? I mean, like if you
I hadn't even thought about this, AC.
Yeah, because think about this. If I go and give a lecture for 90 minutes on something, after 5 minutes, I'm losing them.
Oh my gosh,
right?
Yeah.
I mean, and that's the Gen Zs and Gen Alphas, right?
So what do you do?
Okay, so what do is I don't lecture. So that's where I become, the classroom becomes, so I always say this, the faculty is a conductor. So they are coming to the middle of the classroom. I would always use this analogy. Traditional days are when faculty are in the front of the classroom and you have students all over in front of you, versus the future of learning is the faculty are conductors. So they are coming to the middle of the classroom. You, again, as a student, you've already taken care of some, what I call asynchronous learning, that, again, about some concepts and things like that. You've come prepared with that. The faculty then asks you to really interact with real problems in a way that you're applying that learning and you're learning from that. And then for the rest of the class, you're talking about your experience in that. Hey, I tried doing this. I couldn't get this done. There is some problem here. Can we talk about it? So then you're reasoning it out, you're talking about it, and that conversation is getting more and more engaging. So that's how I see the future of learning is happening. In fact, we have redefined our curriculum. So we just went through the last 8 months. What I did was I worked with my wonderful faculty and staff to say, if we want to think about the future of business, the future of business school education cannot be what we've been doing for the last 30 years. We've got to change that. We've got to engage our students very early enough. Like if a student comes to Ohio State University, we want to engage them as a freshman. We want to make sure that they understand when they come and get a business degree, what is it to work in a company? And we've got to expose them to some of these learning opportunities.
Early on.
Very early on. And then we've got to also make sure our curriculum is changing where it's much more technology enabled and it's much more experiential, where they are not just sitting passively, they are actively learning by engaging with these problems.
Overall, when you think about cultivating leaders, what qualities do you think are most critical for navigating uncertainty and change during these times? I feel like that's a question that goes with what we're talking about, no matter the generation that you're in.
Yeah, I actually think about 5. I've done some work in this area. I always think these 5 important leadership skills are very, very, very important, no matter what you're dealing with. And this applies to uncertainty and all. So one thing is, I want leaders should have a habit of daily reflection. So what do I mean by that is, I've talked to several leaders who do this. Again, that they, no matter how busy their days are, they spend 5 minutes every night to just talk about what is right, what went wrong that day, what did they do well, what can be done better tomorrow. And then always have that idea of, okay, I'm going to do something different tomorrow. So I've seen leaders do what they call journals. So they actually write something in the journal, and writing is always very important because it allows you to register some of the thoughts more permanently than when you reflect, when you go for a run or when you cut vegetables or driving and all. It's much more discipline-based, what I call reflection. So reflection is a very important skill that I think leaders should have. Leaders should be humble. Humility, again, like several leaders that I've spoken to, very senior leaders, they're the first one to admit that if they don't know, they don't know. And they're very clear about it. And like, you don't expect, everybody expects the leaders
to know everything.
No.
But that's impossible.
No. And they are the first one to say, I don't know, I want to learn, right? Like the idea around that is very important. So reflective sense, humility is very important. I talked about listening. I've heard so many leaders, again, like where, again, if you have conversations with them, you would see that they are more on the listening mode. They are less on the talking mode. And the more you're listening, the more you're actually having your subordinates and others really be comfortable in expressing their views. And it's very important. I think listening skill is something that I try to do that myself. Today, I'm talking more because we are on a podcast.
And I'm asking you questions.
But typically what I try to do is I want to listen. Listening is very important. So that's the third skill set. Perseverance is a fourth skill set that I think it's very, very important. The idea around never giving up, the idea around doing rapid experiments, I call it, like, let's try this out. Let's do always say this as, let's do an experiment. Let's do an experiment where we're going to try something out. And it's very important for us to measure what it is, where we are. It's a very important skill set. Perseverance is again, if you think about navigating uncertainty, I think the idea around perseverance is absolutely important in what they do. So if you think about it, reflection, humility, listening, perseverance are very, very important skill sets.
And our fifth one.
Yeah. And the fifth one I'm going to say, which is the top of all these things, that the leader has to be much more what I call a focus-based leader. Like they have, again, from a standpoint, they need to know where they want the organizations to grow, and they need to know where their leadership journey takes them. The whole idea around creating focus and creating a purpose, that's very, very important. And you've got to think about everything that we do should have a purpose in what we do. Again, it should not always be market optimization or like getting more wealth. Purpose can also be different things. I want to help somebody. I want to like make sure that I move certain things in a way, right? Like that idea around purpose, very, very, very important. So I think these are skill sets that we need to practice every day. And like I said, leadership I firmly believe, is something that cannot be just taught in a classroom. You cannot do this by reading other books or listening to other podcasts. You can only learn yourself as a good leader by practicing it. And I think that's what is very important in leadership.
Wow. I feel like we just got a lesson. I'm going to go back and listen to this a few times, and our audience probably will too. I'm taking a lot of notes. AC, you've collaborated with companies like Ford. You were talking about work with 3M. What can academia and industry learn from each other when it comes to innovation, do you think?
There is a lot, right? I mean, I think it's a two-way street in my opinion. So I have learned personally, some of my best learnings have not come from another academic, but actually came from practitioners. And there's a reason to it, because they are the ones that are day in and day out working on some problems that I want to study. So I think there is a lot that academics can actually benefit from the industry. And again, there are several people and like several universities, Ohio State is one, where we believe in it, because we believe that we can't be isolated tower of academic excellence if we don't engage with companies and try to work with them on problems and all. The same thing goes vice versa, right? So industry, there is a lot of problems where the industry people think that they may have the solution, but they may not. And they may not think differently. The problem with sometimes in the practice side of it is it's monotonously doing the same thing. Academics sometimes question the status quo, right? We are very good at questioning the status quo, pushing the boundaries, and so on and so forth. So that bridge is also very important. If you want to be if you're a company and you want the next big disruptive thing and innovative thing, again, universities and offers the best place to do that, because universities are I would call a composite of so many different things, right? You have at Ohio State University, you have thought leaders in business. You also have thought leaders in computer science and law and medicine and metallurgy. Where else you get the idea? Take a field like quantum. We all talk about quantum computing. Quantum is going to impact so many different dimensions of things, from pure physics to applied physics to what is happening in computer science to what is happening even in business of doing things, right? So if you want to really think about and work around quantum technologies and all, you need to talk to not just a physicist, you need to talk to not just a computer scientist or a business practitioner. They should all be in the same room to understand the thing around it. So university gives you that kind of a thing where you can go in and actually meet all these experts at the same time.
And get the feedback and input needed.
Exactly.
How can business leaders ensure that this innovation and technology space that we are in this moment in history are guided by ethical decision-making? So you're teaching your students to do that, who will go out and be leaders. But how do current business leaders who may be listening to this podcast really put this into practice in what they're doing in terms of innovation and tech?
Yeah, again, I actually borrowed the quote of one of my colleagues, Dennis Hirsch, who's a good friend of mine. He's a professor of law, and Dennis and I, we do a lot of work in responsible AI governance. So when we do this work on ethics in the area of AI, we always use this quote that Dennis uses. It's would you make this decision if it's going to affect your mother or father or your brother or a sister? Meaning you personalize those decisions, right? In a way that, am I doing the right thing? Am I doing the right thing in a way that it's going to affect my people, but I still want to do the right thing? That's what we call the soft test that we actually do. Because in this day and age, there is a lot of complex decisions that you need to make, and you need to make them very, very pragmatically, very much in the way that it should be very consistent. And so I encourage, again, if you think about a business leader, I always think about this as you can't just think about one-dimensional objective functions. So you can't just think about, I'm going to maximize profits, I'm going to maximize revenue, I'm going to maximize. It has to be a holistic thing. If I make these decisions, I always talk about it as, how much is it affecting your customers? Is it really something that affects your customer? How much is it affecting your employees? Or are you confident that these decisions are going to be perfectly aligned with what your employees want? And are you getting that buy-in from them? It's very important. So you look at your customers, obviously, as business leaders. That's very important. That's why you exist. You look at your employees, see how it exists. And it's kind of a multifunctional thing where you're satisfied no matter how I look at these decisions, it's the right decision to make.
Which brings us back to where we started. This was a very quick half an hour with you because you started with thinking about problems holistically. And really, you apply that over everything you do at Fisher. And I can tell. Okay, I have one last question for you before we end. One of the reasons that we really love to have conversations like this one, yes, we want to dive into your brain and get more information about what you're doing, where you are. But we also know that as a leader and as a professional development is so important to what we do. So I'd love to hear what's influencing you lately. Maybe you're reading a book, listening to a podcast. What is something that you're into right now that you can share with the audience?
I mean, there are lots of things that's influencing me right now, right? Like, again, like the whole world is influencing right now. So I'll tell you, like, one of the things that I'm starting to learn is I go back to like some of the existing literature that's there, right? Like I read a lot of like history books, for instance, and there is a lot of lessons out there, right, in terms of what is happening and how it is happening. So I try to do that.
History is a lamp, right? That's exactly what they say.
Yeah, I do that. I mean, like, for instance, I'm more interested in like civilizations and how they have grown, right? Like what makes certain civilizations better than the other? How does technology come in? I always think about technology is not just something that can come outside. It has to be integrated with what you think, right? Like, and so there's a lot of learnings that I do there.
So historical books that have to do with civilization, growth, and development.
And then the other thing I also think about is like I also there are some good books. There is a good book that I keep reading. It's a book called Built to Last.
Built to Last.
It's an old book. I mean, like people who have done this, like Jim Collins is the person that wrote that book. It's a very good. I mean, it talks about, it's a very simple thing. Why are some companies better than the others? And what makes certain companies innovate and think all the time? And it's not about that they have great leaders. It's not about they are lucky. It's about they have good systems and good processes that we talk about. And those systems and processes allows no matter who the leader is to make sure that they are growing and growing all the time, right? So sometimes I go back to Built to Last as a good book that allows me to like go back and really think about new ideas that I can get from them.
And if I'm not mistaken, Jim wrote Good to Great, which a lot of people talk about,
yes.
But Built to Last I don't hear about as often. Yeah. So this is a really great suggestion.
Yeah, and the Built to Last, it's very simple. They look at 10 companies that he calls as visionary companies and 10 companies that did not do the right things, and he just does comparison. And if you go deeper and deeper into comparison, and you can take your own interpretation around it, you will see that it's not just good leaders, it's about good processes and good systems that helps them behave as good leaders. And that's what we want as organizations. How do I create? Because you see time and again, good leaders can take organizations from good to great, but you need great processes to keep that going. Because once the good leader goes away, the organizations crumble. And if you want the organization to keep going, you want good systems and good processes. And the book talks about that.
AC, it has been a privilege to interview you today. This has been a class in leadership excellence and thinking as a manager and a leader. I really appreciate your time.
Thank you again. Again, this is a great opportunity. I'm learning every day, so it's great to learn about what's happening here, and thank you again for this invite.
Yes, if those listening are eager to learn more about the Ohio State University Fisher College of Business, you can visit fisher.osu.edu. Again, that's fisher.osu.edu. And hey, if you enjoyed today's episode and what AC shared with us, we'd love it if you could take a moment to rate it and review us on iTunes, Spotify, or your favorite podcast platform. Your feedback helps others discover our show and really ensures we keep delivering the stories that matter most. cbuzz is again brought to you in collaboration with Capital University. We're so grateful to their talented students, faculty, and staff for their support in bringing this podcast to life. I'm Michaela Hunt, your host here at cbuzz, the Columbus Chamber of Commerce's premier business podcast. We can't wait to share more inspiring stories and great educational information with you in our next episode.